What's your dream scenario?
My dream scenario is where looking after the place is embedded in every supply chain in the world economy. There's not enough money in the public purse to solve the world's problems, and especially not the world's climate problems. But there is enough money in the global economy to do this, and in the private sector. And carbon markets have demonstrated that you can embed looking after the place in the voluntary carbon market, where you can embed looking after the place in a value chain, where a company offers a service or a product and they say on it, look, this is zero carbon. And those products and those services are competing very well in the market. And they're creating a new economy where more and more suppliers of goods and services are decarbonizing before they offer that service. And so imagine somebody who really doesn't want to help the climate system. That maybe they're really completely opposed to it. But one day, everything they buy and everything they do will be decarbonized before it gets to them. To me, that's the future. And looking after the carbon parts of the world is not the whole story. So when our carbon solutions also come with lots and lots of co-benefits, where we source our carbon credits from projects that help deliver climate resilience, help deliver biodiversity and water quality and community development, then we're starting to transform the way in which we do things. When we source our carbon credits, say from international sources, we target the Pacific Islands. And then in the process, we help to deliver sustainable development goal outcomes in our region without it having to come out of the taxpayer's pocket. And this really changes the whole game. So that's the future for me, is the embedding of looking after the planet into every supply chain.
Yes, so it just becomes a natural thing rather than something that has to be programmed. Wonderful.
That's right. And it also means you're not having to ask everybody in the economy to change their outlook on life, their values, or their
Yes.
concern. That you're not asking that to happen. You are just changing what is available when they go to buy something. And I think this relates to what is our theory of change. Do we think that the way to change the world is to airbash everybody into adopting a particular outlook and value set? I don't think that's going to work. It hasn't worked so far. I don't think it'll work at the kind of scale we need it. Whereas if somebody turns up to a car yard and says, oh, look, they're only electric, and if they find that they don't really need a car very much because the public transport system is so good that cars are not needed, or where instead of owning cars, you just do Spotify for cars, where you buy access to cars rather than own them. And then when you need one, you just go on your phone app and find a rideshare vehicle that's parked around the corner, and then you book it for the weekend and off you go. This is the future, where the actual supply chain itself is changed so that we don't need to rely on trying to change people's values or culture. I think it's so important to respect people's values and respect people's culture, and then they're going to be a lot less threatened by the change that comes. So that's the future for me.
Wow, thank you. John, do you have a dream scenario?
Yes, I mean, I was a Boy Scout when I was young, and I feel like I am reasonably responsible at understanding things that affect myself and my family, and trying to learn about what the positive and negative effects are of them. So my dream scenario is that everyone takes a bit more personal responsibility. And I think in society, there's a lot of people who will be rethinking that, since they just don't hop on a plane and go around the globe for their holiday. But there are a lot of people who can't afford to make those choices because they just have enough money and sometimes not enough to get through the week. So, I mean, I became aware, I read a book about 20 years ago which talked about social capital, financial capital, and human capital. the environment was embedded in that book. But when I tried to socialize that around my community, people looked at me weird when I talked about social capital. And of course, now we see social capitals replacing GDP as one of the capitals that we need to plan for. So I guess things happen over 20 years. So my dream scenario is that people take responsibility for their actions and make informed decisions. That's easier depending on where you sit in the realm of the society to do that. But the thing that gives me hope that it's happened is we try to have a bit of diversity in our conferences. So 3-4 years ago, I started running protein tech to, the technology around alternate proteins was taking off. And of course, Singapore is now the international hub for this. And when we first started it, we had to work with the sheep and beef people here to say, well, we're not saying that's going to go, because of course, New Zealand can only feed 40 million people. So they're always going to feed the 40 million who can afford our grass-fed beef and sheep, beef and lamb. But in the space of the 3 years that since we started running protein tech, you can buy a plant burger at all the major food outlets that, commodity food buyers buy their food. And that change, that underpins what Sean's saying is, it'll end up implicit in the system, and the big carbon emitters will want to do the right thing. So I look at the way plant proteins have taken off, and some people would sit down and eat a burger not even knowing that it's plant-based. So I think it's already happened in that space. And from that point of view, everyone will be an environmental Boy Scout in my dream scenario.